Hey guys, hi, welcome back once again. My name is Vaishali, and today I'd like to talk about the flip side of plentiful, or how Carl Jung would have said, the shadow aspect of plentiful. Plentiful that we also associate with abundance. In fact, the root word for abundance is overflowing, fullness, plenty, copious quantity, and supply. So when most of us are talking about abundant mindset, when most of us are desiring abundance, why the heck did I choose to venture into understanding the shadow aspect of plentiful, the flip side of abundance? Firstly, because on a very personal level, I like to look at the whole coin, the pleasant and the unpleasant, the comfortable and the uncomfortable aspects of everything about life itself. And life and everything about life can truly be appreciated if we have the willingness and the curiosity to look at the whole picture, to look at the wholesomeness of everything. And that's my personal endeavor. Now, on the other side, there's a saying that also goes that half knowledge is more dangerous than no knowledge. And the two incidences, one of which has been happening for the past few months, in fact, a lot of few months, and the one that happened very recently prompted me to take up this particular topic. So the one incident that has been happening for the longest time and of late kind of triggers me the most, almost on an everyday basis, is the overflow of population, which I find to be particularly annoying, especially when I'm on the roads. Now, of course, I'll also accept that probably we are one of the populations with the youngest brain capacities, and that has its own benefits. And yet, that is only half the picture. Our population has been growing at an uncurtailed speed. Now, it's been an area of concern for most people in the public healthcare department, in the lawmaking department, in the educational department, from the time when even I was in school, when I first started to hear about it from class 7th onwards. And I would say that's close to more than 30 years. And we're still addressing the same issue because it infiltrates itself into many other areas of our lives. On the grassroots level, it infiltrates into the land-man ratio. And not surprisingly, from what I found, the statistics tells us that the land per person ratio in India is 0.0024, while in the world it is 0.011, which I believe is quite huge. And metaphorically, I can compare it to a tree that maybe produces 10 fruits every single day. And say if there are only 2 people to consume from that tree, the 2 people would have good enough amount to eat, to consume, and maybe even to store and to save for themselves and for each other. Now let's even assume that there are not 2 but 5 people. They might get good enough to eat but not to save and to store. Now say the number increases to 8 or 10 people who are consuming from that particular tree. They just might get enough to satiate their taste buds. And maybe with time they may adapt themselves to reduce their consumption, which may then cause undernourishment as well. Now let's assume if this population of human grows in size from 10 to 12 to 15 to 20 to 25, and the tree being an organic entity can only still give 10 fruits. Quite naturally, one side of plentifulness, one side of overflow may lead to the depletion of the other side, may lead to the depletion of resources, first affecting one side, which may then in turn affect the other side as well. Quite naturally, since organically the tree can only produce so much at a given point in time, it would automatically entail a few things. Firstly, it can entail that we cut down on the food that we eat. And here I'm talking of the daily basic requirement of every human being. The next way to go and meet those requirements would be to go towards things that are artificially inseminated, that are not organically, naturally produced. Because quite naturally, nature works at its own rhythm, at its own pace. And since one side has become excessive, there has been a natural imbalance that has been created, which plays out its causes and its effect on each other. This abundant or overflow of population has also resulted in an increase in the unemployment sector, which quite naturally tells me that a lot many more people are living now below the poverty line, which quite naturally then veers towards survival and not towards thrival, wherein it then becomes the question of the survival of the fittest. And when it comes down to survival, it's the animal instincts in us that takes over us. Quite naturally, conflicts in all shapes, sizes, and forms is the natural outcome of that, is the natural shadow aspect of plentifulness. The shadow aspect of this plentifulness, of this abundance, also spills in the literacy ratio of man to woman, and thereby even in the gender pay gap. Now, one of the surveys that I was going through in keeping with the literacy ratio tells us that an average female literacy rate throughout the world is 79.9%, while for men it is 89.2%, almost 10% more. And India lingers behind at 62.3% for women as compared to 80% for men. Quite naturally, a major chunk of the population is then not even aware of their own rights and duties. And we cannot really change what we are not even aware about, because we really can't have a discussion and a discourse of what we are not even aware about. Because every change on both personal and interpersonal level starts with awareness. The second recent example that I'd like to share is in keeping with this conversation that I had with a friend of mine, a friend who was visiting India after long. And so we had gone out, and this friend of mine was quite amazed with all of the retail shops that we have, offering so much with so many choices, which is so unfathomable from the place this person comes from. And casually and candidly, the person mentioned that most Indians, when they come back to India from the place that I come from, kind of almost go berserk shopping themselves to madness. When they come back here, they want to hog and hog and hog and collect, because people don't have so many choices. So much of plentifulness back here makes them go a little crazy, makes them go overboard, wherein people just keep buying and buying and buying without actually trying to make any sense of it. The world that we live in today also beautifully provides us with tons and tons of information in keeping with almost all kinds of subjects. And when I say beautiful, I'm quite grateful to the kind of information that we have to our access, which our ancestors probably did not have, especially with regards to emotional intelligence, especially with regards to wisdom, especially in keeping with mindfulness. And yet at the same time, it's also called as information overload. Abundant, excessive, and plentiful information, unfortunately, that has not been processed properly. Exactly like the mixer grinder, which when overloaded with anything stops. Exactly like our mobile phones, which gets downloaded with excessive information. And if that excessive, abundant, plentiful junk is not cleared, the mobile phone gradually slows down. Its optimal capacity to work, to process, slows down. So as much as we all like the idea of abundance, it has to be taken in, it has to be envisioned with a pinch of salt, with discernment. And unless we are willing to look at both the sides of the coin, metaphorically speaking, one side of the coin will always be in our shadow, in the dark, that we'll not be aware of. Something that's also referred to as the unconscious and the subconscious, which is essentially our driving mechanisms for most parts of our everyday lives. Let's try to look at the wholesomeness of things, because as Carl Jung would say, that wholesomeness is achieved by integrating the shadow and the light together. Let's do that for ourselves, and I will see you once again the next week. Till then, stay tuned in. And guys, if you do like the contents of my videos, please do like, share, and subscribe.